This child is not mine. Get out of my house, you cheating woman! Adebayo's voice thundered across our dining room in our lay-home, his finger pointing accusingly at our 3-month-old daughter, Funmi, who was peacefully sleeping in my arms. The Sunday family dinner that had started so beautifully just moments before now felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. What would you do if your husband said this to you? Hit like if you've experienced betrayal and comment below where you're watching from. My heart stopped beating for what felt like an eternity. Around our mahogany dining table sat his entire family. His mother, Mama Adebayo, his 2 sisters, Kim and Basie, his brother Tund, and their spouses. Everyone had come to welcome our new baby, bringing gifts wrapped in colorful Ankara fabric and traditional blessing prayers. The aroma of jalafrezi and pepper soup still lingered in the air. But now everything felt poisoned by his words. "Ada, what are you saying?" I whispered, my voice barely audible above the sudden silence that had fallen over the room. Little Funmi stirred in my arms, her tiny fists clenching as if she could sense the tension surrounding her. "Look at her!" he shouted again, his dark eyes blazing with fury. "Look at this child and tell me she looks like me. Her skin is too light. Her nose is different. This is not my daughter." Mama Adebayo gasped, her hand flying to her chest where her gold necklace caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through our windows. "Oi, my son, what are you saying? Babies change as they grow. No, Mama." He slammed his fist on the table so hard that the china plates jumped. "I've been watching this child for 3 months, and every day I see more proof that a modeler has been unfaithful to our marriage. She has brought shame to our family name. The accusations hit me like physical blows. I had been married to Otto for 4 years, and never once had I even looked at another man. I worked as a nurse at Lagos General Hospital, spent my evenings at home preparing his meals, and devoted my weekends to his family gatherings. My entire world revolved around being the perfect wife he claimed to want. "Ado, please!" I pleaded, standing up slowly with Funmi still in my arms. "You know I have never betrayed you. You know the kind of woman I am, the kind of woman you are." He laughed bitterly, a sound that chilled me to my bones. "The kind who sleeps with other men while her husband works day and night to build an empire for his family." His business importing electronics from China had indeed been successful, allowing us to move to this beautiful house in Lekki Phase 1 just 2 years ago. I had supported him through every late night, every business trip, every moment of stress. I had even delayed my own dreams of advancing my nursing career to focus on building our home. "Brother, please calm down," Tan said gently, reaching across the table. "Let's discuss this properly. Accusations like this, there's nothing to discuss." Otto's voice rose even higher. "I want a DNA test, and when it proves what I already know, I want this woman and her bastard child out of my house permanently." The word bastard hung in the air like a curse. I felt my knees go weak, but I forced myself to remain standing. My daughter's innocent face looked up at me. Her dark eyes, the same dark eyes Asher father's, though he refused to see it, blinking slowly. Kemi, his younger sister, stood up abruptly. "O'Day! This is going too far. Oh, Matila is a good woman. We all know this. A good woman doesn't give birth to another man's child." He roared back at her. That's when I realized this wasn't a sudden outburst. This had been building in High's mind for weeks, maybe months. I remembered the way he'd been looking at Funmi lately, the questions he'd been asking about my daily routines, the suspicious glances when I came home from work. "If you want a DNA test, we'll do a DNA test," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt. "But until then, don't you dare call our daughter names." "Our daughter." He stepped closer to me, and I could smell the palm wine on his breath. "She stopped being our daughter the moment I realized she doesn't carry my blood." Mama Adebayo began to cry softly, her tears falling onto her blue lace wrapper. This is not how we raised you to treat a wife, my son, even if you have doubts. Enough. Adu silenced his mother with a sharp look. Oh, Mata, pack your things. You have until tomorrow morning to leave this house. Take your child and go back to your family. Let them deal with the shame you've brought. The room spun around me. In traditional Yoruba culture, being sent back to your family in disgrace was one of the worst things that could happen to a married woman. It meant not just the end of my marriage, but social death in our community. Ado, I said, my voice growing stronger. You're making a terrible mistake. When that DNA test proves you wrong, what will you do then? He smiled coldly. When it proves I'm right, you'll understand why I could never look at you or that child the same way again. Bay stood up, her own baby son clutched to her chest. Brother, please reconsider. Children often look different when they're born. Give it time. Time. He laughed harshly. I've wasted enough time pretending to love a child that isn't mine. I've wasted enough time being married to a woman who has no respect for our vows. I looked around the table at the faces of his family members. Some looked shocked, others embarrassed, but none of them seemed willing to truly stand up against his decision. In that moment, I understood that I was truly alone. Fine, I said, surprising everyone, including myself with the firmness in my voice. I'll leave. But Adabo, remember this day. Remember how quickly you threw away 4 years of marriage and a 3-month-old baby based on nothing but your suspicions? My suspicions? He stepped even closer. Woman, I have eyes. I have a brain. And I have pride, none of which will allow him to raise another man's child. I walked toward the stairs leading to our bedroom, Funmi still sleeping peacefully in my arms. At the foot of the stairs, I turned back to look at him one final time. When you realize your mistake, I said softly, don't come looking for us. His laughter followed me up the stairs. Trust me, I won't. As I climbed those stairs for what I didn't know would be the last time, I heard the family's voices rising in heated discussion below, but their words became a blur. A sown thought crystallized in my mind with startling clarity. If Adabo wanted to destroy our family based on lies and suspicion, then perhaps it was time he learned what real consequences looked like. That night, as I packed our belongings into 3 small suitcases, little did he know that he had just awakened something in me that would change both our lives forever. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. Oh, Mata, my daughter, what has that foolish man done to you? My mother, Mom, and Goy opened the door of our family compound in Mushin at 2 a.m. Her wrapper hastily tied around her waist and her head tie crooked from sleep. Behind her, the familiar smell of our old home, palm oil, dried fish, and the faint scent of my father's pipe tobacco welcomed me back to a place I never thought I'd return to in shame. Mama, I whispered, unable to say more as tears finally began to fall. I had held them back during the entire 2-hour journey from Lekki, sitting in the back of a taxi with my 3 suitcases and my sleeping daughter. But seeing my mother's concerned face broke the dam I'd built around my emotions. She pulled me and funned me into her arms immediately, not asking any questions until we were safely inside. The sitting room looked exactly as I remembered. The old brown sofa with its faded floral pattern, my father's favorite armchair positioned directly in front of our small television, and the framed wedding photos of my 3 older brothers hanging on the wall. Sit down. Tell me everything, Mama said, taking Meme from my arms with the practiced ease of a grandmother who had welcomed many children into this house. I told her everything. Every word Adebayo had shouted, every accusation, every moment of humiliation in front of his family. My mother listened without interruption, her face growing darker with each detail. That ungrateful boy, she finally said when I finished. After everything you did for him, working double shifts at the hospital to support his business when it was struggling, cooking for his friends and family every weekend. giving up your plans to specialize in pediatric nursing so you could focus on being his wife. She was right. I had sacrificed so much for our marriage. When Adabo's electronics import business was starting, I had worked extra hours at Lagos General Hospital, bringing home my salary to help him pay suppliers. I had turned down opportunities to attend advanced training courses that would have helped my career, choosing instead to be the supportive wife he claimed he needed. And now he throws you out like you're nothing, Mama continued, gently rocking Funmei, who was beginning to stir. Based on what? The way a 3-month-old baby looks. Foolishness. He wants a DNA test. Mama, I said, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. He's convinced himself that Funmei isn't his daughter. Then give him the test, my mother said firmly. Let science prove what we already know, that he's a fool who has destroyed his family for nothing. But even as she said it, something cold settled in my stomach. What if the test results weren't enough? What if Adabo found another reason to reject us? What if this wasn't really about Funmei's appearance, but about something deeper? Perhaps he'd already found someone else and was using this as his excuse to get rid of us. The next morning, I woke upon my childhood bed to the sound of our compound coming alive. My sister-in-law Maka was in the kitchen preparing breakfast. My brother Chick was getting ready for his job at the bank, and my father was sitting in his chair reading his newspaper as he had every morning for the past 30 years. Oh, Mata, Papa called when he saw me emerge from the bedroom with Funmi. Come sit with your old father. I settled beside his chair, the same spot where I used to sit as Akilde when he told me stories about Ourensters. Papa was a retired teacher, a quiet man who chose his words carefully and believed in the power of education and dignity. Your husband is a weakman, he said simply, not looking up from his newspaper. Strong men protect their families. They don't destroy them based on fear and suspicion. Papa, I don't know what to do, I admitted. How do I rebuild my life from here? I have a baby to take care of. I need to return to work and everyone in Lekki will know what happened. He folded his newspaper and looked at me with eyes that held the wisdom of his 68 years. My daughter, life will test you in ways you never expected. The question isn't what happened to you. The question is who you choose to become because of what happened. His words stayed with me as I spent the morning making phone calls. First, I called my supervisor at Lagos General Hospital to request emergency leave to sort out my personal situation. Mrs. Okafor, who had been like a mentor to me, was immediately supportive. Take all the time you need, Oyla, she said. Your job will be here when you're ready. Next, I called my best friend, Funk, who worked as a lawyer in Victoria Island. When I told her what had happened, she was furious. That man has lost his mind. She shouted into the phone. Oh, Mata, you need to protect yourself legally. Don't sign any divorce papers without proper representation and definitely get that DNA test done by a reputable lab, not some place he might try to manipulate. Funk, I can barely think straight right now. How can I fight a legal battle? Because you have to, she said firmly. Not just for yourself, but for Funmi. That child deserves her father's name and inheritance. Don't let his temporary madness rob her of her future. That afternoon, as I sat in the compound courtyard watching my mother play with Funmi, my phone rang. It was Kamado's younger sister. Sister Omila, she said, her voice filled with shame. I'm so sorry about yesterday. What my brother did was wrong. Thank you, Kim, I replied, though her words felt hollow after her silence when it mattered most. He's been asking around about DNA test centers, she continued. But, sister, I think there's something else. Yesterday, after you left, I overheard him on the phone with someone. A woman? He was telling her that the problem would be solved soon. My blood went cold. What woman? I don't know, but the way he was talking, it sounded familiar. Like someone he's been speaking to for a while. After she hung up, I sat staring at my phone, pieces of puzzle beginning to form in my mind. Adebayo's sudden interest in Funma's appearance, his eagerness to throw us out, his confidence that we wouldn't be coming back. What if this wasn't about suspected infidelity at all? What if he was the one who had been unfaithful? That evening, as my family gathered for dinner in our small dining room, I made a decision that would change everything. I looked around at the faces of the people who truly loved me. My parents, who had welcomed me back without judgment. My brothers, who were already discussing how to support me and fund me. My sister-in-law, who had cleared out space in the children's room for my daughter's things. "I want that DNA test," I announced. "But I want it done properly with legal documentation." Of course, Papa nodded approvingly. Truth has a way of revealing itself. "Butas," I spoke those words. I was already planning something beyond just proving Funmi's paternity. If Adabo wanted to play games with our family's reputation, if he thought he could discard 4 years of marriage and a 3-month-old baby without consequences, then he was about to learn exactly what kind of woman he'd underestimated. I spent that night awake feeding Funmi and staring out the window at the familiar sights of Mushin, the corner shop where I used to buy sweets as a child, the primary school where Papa had taught for 20 years, the small mosque where our Muslim neighbors gathered for prayers. This community had raised me to be strong, to be dignified, but also to stand up for myself when necessary. By morning, I had a plan forming in my mind. It would take time, patience, and careful execution. But if Adabo wanted a war, he had just chosen the wrong woman to fight. The DNA test would prove Funmi was his daughter, but that would only be the beginning of what I intended to teach him about consequences. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. The DNA test results are ready. Mrs. Adabo, Dr. Emma Okonkwo, handed me the sealed envelope 3 weeks after that horrible Sunday dinner. We sat in his pristine laboratory in Victoria Island, the same lab that handled paternity tests for the Lagos State Judiciary. I had insisted on using the most reputable facility in Lagos with proper legal documentation and chain of custody procedures that even Adabo couldn't question. My hands trembled slightly as I held the envelope. Beside me, my friend Funk squeezed my shoulder reassuringly. Across the table, Adabo sat with his arms crossed, accompanied by his own lawyer, Mr. Babatunda, and surprisingly his mother. Mama Ado had called me 2 days earlier, crying into the phone. "My daughter, this madness has gone too far. That boy refuses to listen to reason. I'm coming to witness this test myself, so no one can lie about what it says. Open it," Adabo said coldly, his eyes fixed on some point beyond my shoulder. He hadn't looked directly at me or Funmi once during this entire meeting. I broke the seal carefully and unfolded the official document. The word swam before my eyes for a moment, then crystallized into focus. Probability of paternity 99.9997%. Result: Mr. Adabeo Owandu is the biological father of Funmo Owandamu. The silence in the room was deafening. I looked up at Adabo, expecting to see shame, regret, maybe even relief. Instead, his face remained stone cold, as if the scientific proof of his daughter's paternity meant nothing to him. If you've ever been vindicated after being wrongly accused, hit that like button and tell us in the comments, what would you say to someone who doubted you like this? "Well," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. "Do you have anything to say to your daughter? To your wife?" He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the polished floor. "The test proves she's mine biologically. It doesn't prove you weren't unfaithful." The audacity of his words hit me like a slap. Even faced with undeniable scientific evidence, he was still trying to justify his cruelty. "A day," Mama Ado gasped, rising from her own chair. "You have been proven wrong. This is your daughter. Your wife deserves an apology, and you need to bring your family home immediately." I don't need to do anything, he replied sharply. Biology doesn't change the fact that I have lost trust in this marriage. Some things can't be repaired. Funk leaned forward, her lawyer instincts kicking in. Mr. Owandmu, are you saying that despite this evidence you refuse to reconcile with your wife? That's exactly what I'm saying. He turned to look at me for the first time since we'd entered the room. Oila, I'll provide child support as required by law, but our marriage is over. You can file for divorce. In that moment, something inside me shifted permanently. The hurt, the hope I'd been secretly harboring that he would come to his senses. It all crystallized into something much colder and more calculating. I see, I said calmly, folding the DNA results and placing them carefully in my handbag. So even when proven wrong, you're too proud to admit your mistake. Even when your 3-month-old daughter is proven to be yours, you'd rather destroy your family than face the truth about yourself. What truth? He challenged, smiled. Then a smile that made Funk look at me with surprise. The truth that this was never really about Funmi's appearance. This was about giving you an excuse to do what you already wanted to do. His lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Mama Adebayo was crying softly into her handkerchief. You've made your choice, Adebayo, I continued, standing up and adjusting Funmi's carrier on my chest. Just remember that choices have consequences, and sometimes those consequences take time to reveal themselves. Are you threatening me? He asked. But I heard something in his voice, perhaps the first hint of uncertainty he'd shown, threatening you. I laughed softly. No, my dear ex-husband, I'm simply telling you that actions have reactions. You threw away a loyal wife and your own daughter based on nothing but your paranoid suspicions. You've chosen to destroy our family, even when faced with proof of your error. I'm simply saying that life has a way of teaching people the value of what they've thrown away. As we left the laboratory, Mama Adebayo caught up with me in the parking lot. Oh, Mata, my daughter, please don't give up on him. He's confused, maybe even scared. Men sometimes do foolish things when they're afraid. I hugged her gently. This woman who had always treated me like her own daughter. Mama, I love you, but your son has made his choice very clear. He wants me to file for divorce, so I will respect his wishes. That afternoon, back at my family's compound, I sat with Funk as she explained the divorce process. But my mind was elsewhere. Already planning something that would unfold over months, maybe years. Oh, Mula, are you listening? Funk asked. We need to discuss alimony, child support, division of assets. That house in Lekki, his business. You're entitled to a significant portion. Handle whatever you think is fair, I said absently. I trust your judgment. She studied my face carefully. You're planning something. I'm planning to build my life, I replied truthfully, starting with my career. The next morning, I called Mrs. Okafor at Lagos General Hospital. Ma, I'm ready to come back to work, but I also want to discuss those pediatric nursing specialization courses you mentioned last year. Wonderful, she said enthusiastically. Actually, there's a new program starting next month. A partnership with the University of Lagos Medical School. It's intensive, but it could advance your career significantly. After hanging up, I made several more calls. To the University of Lagos about their nursing program. To a child care center near the hospital about enrollment for FundMe. To my bank about my savings account that I'd been quietly building for years without Adebo's knowledge. My brother Chick found me that evening sitting in the compound courtyard with my laptop, researching pediatric nursing programs while Funmi slept peacefully in her carrier beside him. Sister, what are you doing? Hesked, settling into the plastic chair next to mine. Planning my future, I said simply. And what about Ado? What about making him pay for what he did to you? I looked up at him. This brother who had always protected me growing up. Oh, Chike, he's going to pay, but not in the way you think. What do you mean? I closed my laptop and picked up my sleeping daughter, holding her close to me chest. Right now, Adabo thinks he's won. He thinks he's freed himself from responsibility, from the burden of a wife and child he convinced himself he didn't want. He's probably celebrating, maybe even with whoever that woman was that Kim heard him talking to. So let him enjoy his freedom for now. Let them think he made the right choice. Because while he's celebrating, I'm going to become someone he never expected me to become. Someone successful, independent, and completely beyond his reach. I stood up gently, swaying to keep Funmi calm. And then when he realizes what he lost, not just a wife, but a partner who could have built an empire with him. When he sees what I've become without him, that's when he'll understand the true cost of his choices. Chick smiled slowly. Revenge served cold, not revenge. I corrected him. Justice. There's a difference. Revenge is about hurting someone. Justice is about letting their own actions teach them the consequences of their behavior. That night, as I lay in my childhood bed with my daughter sleeping peacefully beside me, I thought about the woman I had been just a month ago, the devoted wife who'd sacrificed her dreams for a man who threw her away at the first challenge. That woman was gone forever. In her place was someone new, someone who would use the next 5 years to build something beautiful and successful. Not out of spite, but out of the unbreakable strength that comes from having nothing left to lose. Adebayo wanted his freedom. I was about to show him exactly what that freedom would cost him. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. Congratulations, Mrs. Ogundamu. You've graduated top of your class in pediatric nursing specialization, Dr. Adani Bekair, the program director at University of Lagos Medical School. Shook my hand warmly as I stood on the graduation stage 2 years after that devastating DNA test meeting. In the audience, my parents beamed with pride. My brothers cheered loudly, and 4-year-old Funmi clapped her tiny hands, not fully understanding, but sensing the importance of the moment. What they didn't see was the empty seat I had deliberately left in the front row, a reminder to myself of the man who'd chosen to miss every important moment in his daughter's life. The past 2 years had been a whirlwind of transformation. While Adabo had moved on with his life, I had quietly been building something extraordinary. Their divorce had been finalized 6 months. After our laboratory meeting with Funkensuring, I received a fair settlement, including half the value of our lucky house and a portion of his business assets. But more importantly, I had received something he never expected me to want: complete freedom. Mama, you look beautiful. Funmi ran to me as soon as the ceremony ended, her little arms wrapping around my legs. She was wearing the pink dress my mother had sewn specially for this day, and her hair was braided with colorful beads that caught the afternoon sunlight. "Thank you, my darling," I said, lifting her up and spinning her around. Mama worked very hard for this moment. What I didn't tell her was that this graduation was only the beginning. During my specialization program, I had discovered something about myself that I never knew existed: a natural talent for pediatric emergency medicine. My supervisors had been impressed by my calm under pressure, my ability to connect with frightened children and panicked parents, and my innovative approaches to treatment protocols. "Oh, Mata," Dr. Becker approached me after the crowd had dispersed. "I have a proposition for you." We sat in her office overlooking the Lagos University Teaching Hospital campus. Through the windows I could see the sprawling medical complex where I'd been doing my clinical rotations. The same hospital where I had saved the life of a 3-year-old boy just last month when he came in with severe malaria complications. "There's a new pediatric emergency unit being established at Eco Hospital in Victoria Island," she explained. "They're looking for a head nurse, someone with your qualifications and leadership potential. The salary is substantial, and there would be opportunities for international training and conferences. My heart raced. Eco Hospital was one of the most prestigious private medical facilities in West Africa. Working there would put me in contact with Lagos's elite international patients and cutting-edge medical technology. What about FundMe? I asked, though I was already imagining myself in that role. They have an excellent child care facility on site. Plus, the salary would be enough to afford the best private schooling for her. That evening, I sat with my parents in our family compound, discussing the opportunity. Papa, now 70, had grown even more proud of my achievements than he had been when I first became a nurse. "My daughter," he said, adjusting his reading glasses, "when you first came home 2 years ago, broken and crying, I knew you would rise again. But this is beyond what even I imagined. The question is," Mama added, bouncing FundMe on her lap, "are you ready to move back to Victoria Island? That's very close to where he works." She was right. Adabo's electronics import business was headquartered in Victoria Island. Taking this job would mean moving back into his world, though from a very different position than before. "Maybe it's time," I said thoughtfully. "Maybe it's time for him to see what he chose to throw away." 3 weeks later, I signed the contract with Eco Hospital. The salary was more than double what I had been earning at Lagos General, and it came with benefits that would have seemed like a fantasy 2 years earlier. Health insurance that covered international treatment, housing allowance, annual travel stipend for medical conferences, and a car lease program. I used my savings and the divorce settlement to secure a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in a high-rise building in Akoi, just 15 minutes from the hospital. From our living room window, FundMe and I could see the Lagos Lagoon stretching toward the horizon and the expensive boats of the wealthy cutting through the water below. "Mama, is this our new house?" FundMe asked on moving day, running from room to room in excitement. "Yes, my darling. This is where we start our new life." What she didn't understand was that our new life was specifically designed to intersect with her father's world in ways he would never expect. My first day at Eco Hospital was everything I had dreamed it would be. The pediatric emergency unit was state-of-the-art, with equipment I'd only read about in medical journals. My team consisted of 12 nurses, 3 doctors and support staff who looked home for leadership and guidance. Mrs. Zogandamu, Dr. Chika Okafor, the chief pediatrician, welcomed me warmly. "Your reputation preceded you. We're thrilled to have someone of your caliber leading our emergency unit." Within my first month, I had reorganized the entire department's protocols, reduced patient waiting times by 40%, and successfully managed 3 critical cases that had other hospitals referring patients to us specifically. But it was on a Thursday afternoon in my second month that fate decided to accelerate my timeline. I was reviewing patient files when my assistant nurse Bimp rushed into my office. "Ma, we have an emergency. A 4-year-old boy, severe allergic reaction. Parents are bringing him in now." I grabbed my emergency kit and rushed to the ambulance bay. A luxury Range Rover screeched to a halt, and a well-dressed couple jumped out. The woman carrying a small boy who was clearly in respiratory distress. "Please help us," the woman cried. "He ate something at a party and now he can't breathe." I immediately took charge, directing my team as we rushed the child into the treatment room. As I worked to stabilize him, inserting in 4-line, administering epinephrine, monitoring his vital signs, I was dimly aware of the parents hovering anxiously nearby. "He's going to be fine," I assured them as the child's breathing began to normalize. "We caught it in time. He'll need to stay for observation. But the worst is over." It wasn't until 20 minutes later when I finally looked up from my patient charts that I saw her clearly for the first time. She was beautiful in an obvious way, light-skinned with Brazilian hair extensions, and designer clothes that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. She was also very young, probably not more than 25, and she was holding hands with Adebayo. He stood in the corner of the waiting area, his face pale with worry over the child who was clearly his son. He looked older than when I'd last seen him, more successful if his expensive suit was any indication, but also somehow smaller than I remembered. It took him a full 30 seconds to recognize me. When he did, the blood drained from his face completely. "Oh, Mata," he whispered as if he couldn't believe his eyes. He smiled professionally, the same smile agave all parents in my pediatric emergency unit. "Good evening, Mr. Ogandamu. I'm head nurse Omula Oandmu. I'm pleased to tell you that your son is going to make a full recovery." Therany wasn't lost on me. Here he was, trusting me to save the life of the child he'd had with another woman, while his own daughter, our daughter, was at home being helped with her homework by my mother. "I didn't know you worked here," he stammered. "There are many things you don't know about my life now," I replied calmly. "But right now, let's focus on your son. He'll need to void nuts completely in the future, and I'd recommend carrying an EpiPen at all times." The young woman, his new wife, I assumed, looked between us with growing suspicion. "Do you two know each other?" Before Adabo could answer, I extended my hand to her with perfect professionalism. "I'm head nurse Owanmu. Your son was very brave during his treatment." As they prepared to leave with their son, now fully recovered and asking for ice cream, Adabo lingered behind. "Oh, Mata," he said quietly, "can we talk?" I looked at him. This man who had thrown me out of his house, who'd refused to reconcile even when proven wrong, who had moved on so quickly with someone young enough to be his sister. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ondamu," I said with the same professional courtesy I showed all parents. "I'm needed elsewhere. I hope your son continues to recover well." As I walked away, my head high and my white coat pristine, I heard him call my name one more time. But I didn't turn around. That night, as he tucked Funmi into bed in our beautiful Akoi apartment, she asked me about my day. "I helped save a little boy's life today." I told her truthfully. "Was his daddy grateful, Mama?" I smoothed her braids and kissed her forehead. "His daddy learned something very important today, my darling. Sometimes the people we underestimate become the very ones we need most." As I sat on my balcony later that evening looking out over the glittering lights of Lagos, I couldn't help but smile. Phase 1 of my transformation was complete. I had become successful, independent, and professionally respected in exactly the circles where Adabo moved. But seeing the shock in his eyes today, their realization of what I had become told me that Phase 2 was about to begin, whether I was ready or not. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. "Mama, there's a man at the door asking for you." Funmi's voice carried from our apartment's intercom system one Saturday morning, 3 weeks after the hospital incident. I was in the kitchen preparing her favorite breakfast, plantain and eggs, while she played in the living room. "Tell him Mama's busy," I called back, assuming it was probably someone from the building management or a delivery person. "He says she's my daddy." The wooden spoon I was holding clattered to the floor. I walked slowly to the intercom, my heart pounding despite my outward calm. Through the security camera, I could see Adabo standing in our building's elegant lobby, looking uncomfortable and somehow smaller than he had appeared at the hospital. He was holding a large gift bag and what looked like a bouquet of flowers. Mama Funmi looked up at me with curious eyes. Should I let Daddy come up? For 2 years, she had asked about her father exactly 3 times. Each time I'd told her simply that Daddy lived somewhere else, but that it didn't mean he didn't love her. She had accepted this with the resilience that children possess, especially when surrounded by the abundant love of grandparents, uncles, and aunts who doted on her constantly. Now here was finally ready to meet the daughter he had rejected. "Yes, my darling," I said, activating the door release. "Let Daddy come up." I had exactly 2 minutes to compose myself before the elevator brought him to our floor. I smoothed my weekend clothes, a simple but elegant Ankara wrapper and matching head tie that Mama had sewn for me, and checked my reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back at me was confident, successful, and completely in control of her environment. When the doorbell rang, he let Funmei answer it while I remained in the kitchen doorway watching. "Hello?" Hadbeo said softly, crouching down to Funmei's eye level. "You're even more beautiful than I imagined." She studied him solemnly for a moment. At 4 years old, she had developed her grandfather's thoughtful way of observing people before deciding how to respond to them. "You look like me," she said finally. "Mama has pictures." He glanced up at Methan, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite identify. "Regret, hope, fear. May I come in?" he asked. I nodded, stepping aside to let him enter our home. I watched as he took in the spacious living room with its modern furniture and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lagoon, the expensive artwork on the walls, the obvious signs of prosperity and good taste. "This is beautiful," he said quietly. "Thank you." I gestured toward the sofa. "Please sit, Funmei. Come finish your breakfast." As my daughter returned to the dining table, Adabo remained standing, clearly uncertain about the protocols of this situation he had created. "I brought these for her," he said, holding up the gift bag. "And these?" "These are for you." He extended the bouquet toward me. The flowers were beautiful. Expensive roses and lilies arranged by someone who clearly understood luxury. "But I made no move to take them, Mr. Oandamu," I said formally. "What exactly are you doing here?" I wanted to see her to meet my daughter properly. He set the flowers on the coffee table when I didn't take them. "And I wanted to talk to you about what?" He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I remembered from our marriage when he was nervous or frustrated about everything, about how wrong I was, about what I've learned about myself over the past 2 years. I poured myself a cup of coffee from the pot I'd made earlier, deliberately taking my time. "And what exactly have you learned?" "That I was a fool." His voice was barely above a whisper. "That I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was scared and proud. And because I was already involved with someone else and looking for an excuse to end our marriage without having to admit the truth." There it was. The confession I had suspected but never heard directly. Have you ever had someone finally admit the truth you knew all along? Hit that like button if you know that feeling. "I see," I said calmly, sipping my coffee. "So the accusations about Funmei's paternity were just convenient cover for your own infidelity." "Yes." He looked ashamed, but I felt no satisfaction in his admission. "That ship had sailed long ago, and now you wanna—" "What exactly, Resume?" "Being a father, ask for forgiveness. I want to try to make things right," he said earnestly. "With Funmei, yes, but also, oh, modeler, seeing you at the hospital, seeing what you've accomplished, who you've become, who I've become." I laughed softly. "At Bayo, I'm exactly who I always was. The difference is that now I'm free to be that person without having to make myself smaller to fit into someone else's expectations." Funmei appeared at my side, having finished her breakfast. "Mama, can I see what's in the bag?" "Of course, my darling." Adabo knelt down and opened the gift bag, revealing an expensive tablet designed for children, along with several educational games, and a beautiful doll with braided hair like fun memes. "These are for you," he said gently. "I know I haven't been here, but I'd like to. I'd like to be part of your life if you'll let me." Funmi examined the gifts politely, but without the excitement he was clearly hoping for. "Thank you," she said formally, the same way I had taught her to thank strangers who gave her gifts. "Funmi," I said, "why don't you take your new things to your room? Daddy and I need to talk." After she left, dragging the tablet and doll with mild interest, Adabo and I sat in silence for several minutes. "She doesn't know me," he said finally, pain evident in his voice. "No, she doesn't. And whose fault is that?" "Mine? Completely mine." He leaned forward, his hands clasped between his knees. "Oh, modeler, I know I've no right to ask this, but is there any chance? Any possibility that we could try again?" As a family, I set down my coffee cup carefully. "Try again. I left Kioma 6 months ago," he said, referring to his young wife. "The marriage was a mistake from the beginning. She was everything I thought I wanted, but she wasn't you. She wasn't real the way you're real. Isi. And what about your son with her? I'm paying support and I see him on weekends. But a model, I realize now that I traded my real family for a fantasy. I gave up a woman who supported my dreams, who built a life with me, who would have stood by me through anything, for someone who was just pretty and young and exciting." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Lego skyline. In the distance, I could see the construction cranes building news key scrapers, the boats in the harbor, the bustling life of a city that never stopped growing and changing. "Ado," I said without turning around. "Do you see that building being constructed across the lagoon?" "Yes, 2 years ago that was empty land." The developers had a vision. They made a plan. They invested time and money and effort, and now it's becoming something beautiful and permanent. It turned to face him. "That's what I've done with my life. I've built something new on the foundation of what you destroyed. But we could build something together again." No, my voice was firm, but not angry. "We couldn't because you've shown me who you really are when faced with challenges. You're the kind of man who throws away his family when things get difficult, who chooses to believe the worst rather than fight for the best, who abandons his responsibilities and then comes back, years later expecting forgiveness and second chances. His face fell, so there's no hope, no possibility. I walked back to where he sat, looking down at this man who had once had the power to destroy my world with his words. Adbeo, you can certainly try to build a relationship with Funmi if you're genuinely committed to being a consistent presence in her life. She deserves to know her father, and I won't stand in the way of that. But as for us, I shook my head gently. I'm not the same woman you married. I'm not the woman who would sacrifice her dreams for your comfort. I'm not the woman who would accept being discarded and then taken back when convenient. Then who are you now? He asked quietly. I smiled then, the first genuine smile I'd given him since he'd arrived. I'm a woman who saves children's lives. I'm a mother raising a brilliant daughter. I'm someone who owns her own apartment, drives her own car, and makes her own decisions about her future. I'm someone who learned that the most important relationship you can have is the one with yourself. He sat in silence for several minutes, absorbing my words. I've made a terrible mistake, he said finally. Yes, you have, but you've also given me a gift, though you didn't mean to. What gift? You've shown me exactly what I'm capable of when I stop trying to be what someone else wants me to be. As he prepared to leave, Funmi emerged from her room with the doll tucked under her arm. Daddy, she said, will you come back to see me again? If your mama says it's okay, and if you want me to, then yes. I'd like that very much. She nodded solemnly. Okay, but next time maybe bring something for mama too. She likes books about medicine, not flowers. After he left, I sat on my balcony with my evening tea, watching the sun set over Lagos. My phone buzzed with a text message from Funk. Girl, I heard through the grapevine that Adabo has been asking people about you. Word is he's been regretting his choices. What's your plan? I typed back. There is no plan, there's just life. And life is very good right now. But even as I sent the message, I knew that wasn't entirely true, because seeing him today, watching him realize what he had lost, I understood that the final phase of my transformation was just beginning. Hugh wanted back into my life. He would have to prove he deserved even the smallest corner of it. And that proof would cost him more than he had ever imagined. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. Mrs. Ogundamu, we need to discuss Urek's husband's behavior. It's becoming disruptive. Dr. Chika Okafor, the chief pediatrician at Eco Hospital, sat across from me in his office 3 months after Adebo's visit to our apartment. Through the large windows behind him, I could see the bustling Victoria Island traffic, but my attention was focused entirely on his concerned expression. What exactly has been doing? I asked, though I suspected I already knew. He's been coming to the hospital every week, sometimes twice a week, asking for you. He brings flowers, expensive gifts, and yesterday he actually tried to have lunch delivered to your office. These security guards are starting to recognize him, and it's making the staff uncomfortable. I sighed deeply. For 3 months, Adebo had been conducting what could only be described as a campaign to win me back. It had started innocently enough. Weekly visits to see Funmi, always accompanied by expensive gifts and attempts to extend the visits longer than necessary. But gradually his efforts had escalated. I'll speak to him, I said. Oh, modeler, I'm not just concerned about the disruption. I'm concerned about you. This kind of persistent behavior. It's not healthy for either of you. He was right, of course. What had started as occasional visits had become a suffocating presence in my life. Ado seemed determined to prove his devotion through grand gestures that only highlighted how little he understood about what I actually wanted or needed. That evening, as I was leaving the hospital after my shift, I wasn't surprised to find him waiting by my car in the parking garage. He was holding another bouquet orchids this time and wearing the expensive cologne I used to love, but now found overwhelming. Oh, Mata, please just give me 5 minutes, he said as I approached. Adbio, this has tow stop. I clicked my car remote and the doors unlocked with a soft beep. Your visits to the hospital, the constant gifts, showing up at Funmi's school. I'm trying to show you that I'm serious about making amends. You're showing meth that you still don't listen. I faced him fully, my car keys gripped tightly in my hand. I told you 3 months ago that you could build a relationship with Funmi if you were consistent and genuine. But I also told you that there was no possibility of reconciliation between us. But things could change. People change. I've changed, have you? I challenged him because your current behavior suggests that you're still the same man who believes he can manipulate situations to get what he wants. You're still the same man who thinks grand gestures and expensive gifts can substitute for genuine respect and understanding. His face flushed with frustration. What do you want me to do? How can I prove to you that I'm different? You can start by accepting my decision and focusing on being the father Funmi deserves instead of trying to win back a woman who no longer exists. I opened my car door, but he stepped closer, his hand reaching out as if to stop me. Oh, Mata, please. I made a mistake. A terrible, horrible mistake. But doesn't our history count for anything? Doesn't 4 years of marriage mean something? I looked at him, then really looked at him and saw something that surprised me. Beneath the desperation and the persistent pursuit, I saw genuine fear. He was terrified that he had lost something irreplaceable, and that terror was driving him to increasingly irrational behavior. Our history does mean something, I said gently. It means I know exactly who you are when you're scared, when you're threatened, when things don't go according to your plan. And it means I know that this version of you, their penitent, devoted ex-husband, will disappear the moment you face another challenge. That's not true, isn't it? Ado, you left your second wife 6 months ago because you realized the grass wasn't greener. You're pursuing me now because you finally seen what I've become and you want to be part of my success. But what happens when I disagree with you about something important? What happens when I have to work late or travel for conferences? What happens when another challenge tests your commitment? He had no answer because we both knew I was right. I need to go home to our daughter, I said, emphasizing the word our deliberately. She's waiting for me to help her with her homework. If you want to see her this weekend, you can pick her up at my parents' house on Saturday morning at 10 and 0. But Adebo, if you show up at my workplace again uninvited, I'll have to involve security. As I drove home through the busy Lagos traffic, I thought about the conversation I'd had with Funk just the week before. She had warned me that Adebo's behavior was escalating in ways that concerned her legally. "Girl, I've seen this pattern before," she had said over lunch at our favorite restaurant in Aoyi. "Men who can't accept rejection sometimes become more aggressive in their pursuit. You need to document everything and consider getting a restraining order if necessary. He's not violent," I had protested. "Physical violence isn't the only kind of harassment, Amala. He's disrupting your workplace, showing up uninvited at your home and Funmi's school. He's trying to control your environment even though you've clearly told him to back off." At home that evening, I found Funmi in our living room, working on her kindergarten homework with the focused concentration she had inherited from me. At 4 years old, she was already reading at a level that impressed her teachers, and she had developed a love for mathematics that reminded me of my own analytical mind. "How was your day, my darling?" I asked, settling beside her on the sofa. "Good, Mama. Miss Kem says I'm the best reader in my class. And guess what? Daddy came to school again today?" My blood went cold. "He did? What happened?" "He brought me a new book and asked Miss Kem if he could take me for ice cream, but Miss Kem said she needed your permission first, so he left." I pulled out my phone and immediately called Funmi's school director. Mrs. Aduni answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Owandu, I was just about to call you. We need to discuss your ex-husband's visits. This is the 3rd time this month he's come to the school without prior arrangement. What exactly happened today?" He arrived during afternoon pickup time with gifts for Fun and requested permission to take her off campus. When we explained our policy requiring written permission from the custodial parent, he became agitated. He wasn't threatening, but he was clearly frustrated. He kept insisting that as her father, he should have rights. After I hung up, I realized that Funk had been right. Adebo's behavior was escalating, and his desperation was making him unpredictable. The man who had once thrown us out of his house was now trying to insert himself into every aspect of our lives, and his inability to accept boundaries was becoming dangerous. That night, after Funmi was asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, documenting every incident over the past 3 months. The hospital visits, the uninvited appearances at our apartment building, the school incidents, the expensive gifts that kept arriving despite my clear rejections. As I typed, I realized something that made me blood run cold. In his determination to win me back, Adebo was exhibiting the same controlling, obsessive behavior that had led him to throw us out in the first place. The only difference was that then he had been trying to control me by pushing me away. And now he was trying to control me by pulling me back. But I was no longer the woman who could be controlled. The next morning, I called Funk and asked her to prepare legal documentation regarding Adebo's access to Funmi. I also called the security director at Eco Hospital and formally requested that my ex-husband be banned from visiting me at work unless there was a medical emergency involving our daughter. Then I called Adebo himself. "We need to have a conversation." I told him when he answered tonight, 700 P.M., meet me at the Ryzen Blue Hotel lobby in Victoria Island. "Amila, thank you for calling. I've been trying to reach you. 700 p.m., I repeated firmly. Don't be late. I chose the hotel lobby because it was public, professional, and neutral territory. I also chose it because I knew that what I was about to say to him would change the dynamic between us permanently. It was time to show Ado exactly what happened when someone tried to control a woman who had learned the true meaning of independence. As I prepared for that evening's confrontation, I thought about the advice my father had given me years ago. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Ado had shown me who he was when he threw us out. Now he was showing me again through his inability to respect my boundaries, but this time I wasn't going to be the victim of his behavior. This time I was going to be the one setting the terms. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. You look beautiful tonight. Adebayo stood up from the plush leather chair in the Ryzen Blue lobby as I approached at exactly 700 p.m. He was wearing his best suit, the navy blue one I had helped him pick out for his first major business presentation years ago, and his face was bright with hope that made my heart ache with the weight of what I was about to do. The hotel lobby was elegant and busy, filled with business people, tourists, and couples enjoying evening drinks. Soft jazz music played from hidden speakers, and the warm lighting cast everything in a golden glow that would have been romantic under different circumstances. "Thank you for coming," I said, settling into the chair across from him. I was wearing a simple black dress and minimal jewelry. Professional, dignified, and completely in control. Of course, Medela, I've been hoping we could talk properly. Really talk without interruptions or misunderstandings. A waiter approached our table and Ada ordered wine for both of us without asking what I preferred. It was a small thing, but it reinforced exactly why I'd called this meeting. "I'll have sparkling water with lime," I corrected, looking directly at the waiter. "And cancel the wine order for me." Adabo's face showed the first flicker of confusion. "You used to love that wine. It's the same vintage we had in our anniversary. I used to like many things that I no longer want," I replied calmly. "Which brings me to why I asked you to meet me here tonight." He leaned forward eagerly, his hands clasped on the white tablecloth. "I'm listening." I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app where I had documented every incident over the past 3 months. "In the last 12 weeks, you have visited my workplace 14 times without invitation. You have appeared at our apartment building 8 times without prior arrangement. You have gone to Fund Me School 3 times attempting to remove her from campus without proper authorization. You have sent gifts to my office, my home, and to Fund Me School totaling over 200,000 naira. His smile faltered slightly. "I was trying to show you how much you mean to me. You were trying to control my environment and override my clearly stated boundaries." I set my phone down and looked directly into his eyes. "Adebayo, I need you to understand something very clearly. Your behavior over the past 3 months has not made me miss you or reconsider my decision. It has confirmed that I made the right choice in rejecting your request for reconciliation." The waiter returned with our drinks, and I waited until he left before continuing. "I called you here tonight to give you one final chance to hear me clearly because apparently my previous attempts at communication have been ineffective." "Oh, Mata, please." "No," my voice was firm but not raised. "You're going to listen now, completely without interrupting, because what I'm about to tell you will determine whether you maintain any relationship with your daughter or whether I involve the legal system to protect us both." His face went pale around us. The normal sounds of the hotel lobby continued. Laughter from other tables, the clink of glasses, the soft chime of elevator doors opening and closing. But at our table, the silence was profound. First I began, "You need to understand that there is no possibility, none whatsoever, of romantic reconciliation between us. This is not a negotiation. This is not a challenge for you to overcome with persistence and expensive gifts. This is a fact as permanent as the sun rising in the east. But we have history together. We built something beautiful once. We had 4 years together during which you consistently prioritized your own comfort and convenience over our partnership. When I supported your business financially, you accepted it as your due. When I delayed my career advancement to focus on our home, you saw it as normal. When I became pregnant with your child, you decided I was cheating rather than trust the woman who'd been faithful to you every day of our marriage. I paused to sip my sparkling water, giving him time to absorb my words. The moment our marriage faced its first real test, you didn't fight for it. You didn't fight for me. You didn't even fight for the truth. You chose to believe the worst possible interpretation of events because it gave you permission to do what you already wanted to do. Leave me for a younger woman. I was confused, scared. You were selfish. I corrected him gently. And you still are. Because your current behavior isn't about love or regret. It's about your ego. You're pursuing me now because you've realized that throwing me away was a mistake that cost you more than you expected. You want me back because I become successful and independent, not because you've learned to value who I actually am. His hands were trembling slightly as he reached for his wine glass. That's not true, isn't it, Adebayo? In all your visits, your gifts, your grand gestures over the past 3 months, how many times have you asked me about my work, about my goals, about what makes me happy in my current life? How many times have you tried to understand who I've become, rather than trying to recreate who I used to be? He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. We both knew the answer. You've been trying to win back a version of me that no longer exists. You want the woman who would sacrifice her dreams for your comfort, who would accept being discarded and then gratefully taken back when convenient. But that woman died the day you threw us out of your house. I leaned back in my chair, studying his face as my words sank in. The woman sitting across from you tonight has learned to value herself properly. She's learned that love without respect is worthless, that promises without consistent action are meaningless, and that a man who will abandon his family once will do it again when the next challenge arises. I would never abandon you again. You can't abandon me again because I will never again give you the power to do so. My voice was steady, final. Now, here's what's going to happen going forward. I pulled a folded document from my purse. The legal papers Funk had prepared that morning. These are formal custody and visitation guidelines. You may see Fund Me every other Saturday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and one evening per week from 5 to 7 p.m. All visits must be arranged at least 24 hours in. Advance through our shared calendar app. You may attend her school events and medical appointments if you give 48 hours notice. He took the papers with shaking hands. This is so formal, so cold. This is protection, I corrected him. For Fund Me who deserves consistency and predictability from her father, and for me who deserves to live my life without harassment. Oh, Ma, I was trying to show you I care. You were trying to wear down my resistance through persistence. You were ignoring my clearly stated boundaries because you decided your desires were more important than my comfort and safety. I leaned forward slightly. Let me be very clear. If you violate any of these terms, if you show up at my workplace again uninvited, if you attempt to remove Fund Me from school without proper authorization, if you continue sending unsolicited gifts or trying to manipulate our interactions, I will obtain a restraining order. The color drained completely from his face. You would do that. You would involve the courts. I would do whatever is necessary to protect my daughter and myself from behavior that is becoming increasingly obsessive and controlling. For several minutes, we sat in silence. Around us, the hotel lobby continued its elegant evening rhythm, but our table felt isolated in a bubble of tension and finality. What if I agree to these terms? he asked finally. What if I follow every rule, respect every boundary? Would there ever be a chance? Ado, I said gently, the question you should be asking isn't whether you can win me back. The question is whether you can learn to be the kind of father deserves, because that little girl is the only relationship between us that matters now. And if I prove myself as a father, if I show consistency and reliability, I smiled sadly, then you'll have given your daughter something precious, a father she can count on, but that gift should be given for her sake, not as a strategy to accomplish something else. He stared down at the custody papers for a long time. When he looked up again, his eyes were filled with a mixture of grief and something that might have been understanding. I've lost you completely, haven't I? You lost me the day you chose a suspicion over trust, pride over partnership, and convenience over commitment. I stood up, gathering my purse. But you haven't lost the chance to be Fanmi's father if you can learn to put her needs before your own wants. I walked toward the lobby exit. He called after me. Oh, Mata, I'm sorry for everything. For the man I was, for the mistakes I made, for the time we lost. I turned back to look at him one final time. I know you are, but sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Adbeo. Only consistent right action over time can do that. And that action needs to be focused on being the father your daughter deserves, not on trying to undo the consequences of your choices. Outside the hotel, I stood for a moment in the warm Lagos evening, breathing deeply and feeling lighter than I had in months. The oppressive weight of his pursuit, his desperate attempts to right our history, had been lifted by the clarity of absolute boundaries. As I drove home to Fun, who was spending the evening with my parents, I realized that this had been the final piece of my transformation. I had moved from victim to survivor to success story, and now finally to a woman who could look her past directly in the eye and choose her future without fear or compromise. The little girl who would greet me with excitement about her day at school would grow up seeing what it looked like when a woman valued herself properly. And perhaps that would be the greatest gift I could give her. Not a father who had learned to behave, but a mother who had learned to demand respect. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. Mama, I think Daddy's sad. Fanmi's observation came one Saturday evening as I tucked her into bed after her scheduled visit with Adbeo. It had been 6 months since our confrontation at the hotel, and to his credit, he had followed every rule and respected every boundary I had established. But my daughter, with the intuitive wisdom that children possess, had noticed something I had chosen to ignore. What makes you think that, my darling? I asked, smoothing her soft braids against the pillow. When we go to the park, he watches other families playing together. And sometimes when he thinks I'm not looking, he gets very quiet and stares at nothing. She looked up at me with those dark eyes that were so much like his. Do you think he misses us being a family? The question pierced through the careful emotional armor I'd built around my heart. For 6 months, I have been focused on establishing our new normal. My thriving career, Fanmi's excellent progress in school, our comfortable life in our AOY apartment. I had deliberately avoided thinking about Adu except as a co-parent who needed to be managed within strict boundaries. I think your daddy is learning some important lessons about choices and consequences, I said carefully. But that's his journey to take, not ours to worry about. Okay, Mama? She yawned and snuggled deeper under her covers. I love our life, just the two of us. But sometimes I wonder what it would be like if he lived here too. After she fell asleep, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea, staring out at the Lagos Lagoon glittering under the moonlight. Fanmi's words had stirred something I thought I had successfully buried. Not love for Adabo, but a complex mixture of sadness for what might have been and recognition of the man he was slowly becoming through his consistent efforts with our daughter. Over the past 6 months, he had been punctual for every scheduled visit, patient with Funmi's questions about why they couldn't all live together, and respectful of the boundaries I had set. He brought age-appropriate gifts instead of expensive bribes, listened when she talked about school and friends, and had even started attending her school events as a quiet observer, rather than trying to insert himself dramatically into situations. But more than that, according to my mother, who sometimes supervised the handoffs at the family compound, he had begun asking thoughtful questions about Funmi's development, her interests, her fears and dreams. He was learning to be a father rather than just playing thoroughly when convenient. My phone buzzed with a text message interrupting my thoughts. It was from my friend Dr. Aduni Becker at the University of Lagos Medical School. OT, there's an opportunity one want to discuss with you. International Pediatric Emergency Medicine. Fellowship in London, full scholarship. 1-year program, are you interested? My heart leaped. With excitement, a fellowship in London would be the pinnacle of my professional development, opening doors to opportunities one had only dreamed about. The training would be world-class then, networking, invaluable, and the experience would qualify me for chief medical officer positions at major hospitals across Africa. But it would also mean leaving Lagos for a year, taking Funmi away from the only home she had ever known, and disrupting the fragile stability we had built with Adebo's visitation schedule. I spent the next 3 days researching the fellowship program, reading about the hospitals where I would train, and calculating the financial implications. The scholarship covered tuition and provided a living stipend that would be comfortable for Funmi and me in London. It was an opportunity that might not come again. On Wednesday evening, as I was reviewing the application requirements, my phone rang. It was Ado calling during his scheduled weekly check-in about Funmi. Good evening, Omala. I wanted to confirm Saturday's pickup time and also ask about Funmi's upcoming school play. The invitation said parents could attend, and I wanted to make sure my being there wouldn't make you uncomfortable. His careful consideration of my feelings, his respectful tone, and his focus on Funmi's needs rather than his own desires struck me as genuine growth. The old Ado would have simply shown up and expected accommodation. The play is fine, I said. You can sit with my parents if you'd like. Funmi would enjoy having you there. Thank you. And Omila, I know this isn't part of our arrangement, but I wanted you to know that I've been going to counseling to understand why I made the choices I made and to learn how to be a better father to Funmi. The admission surprised me. That's good to hear. The counselor helped me realize that my behavior after you rejected my reconciliation attempts was just another form of the same controlling patterns that destroyed our marriage in the first place. I'm working on understanding why I do that and how to make different choices. We talked for a few more minutes about Funmi's school schedule and upcoming events. After hanging up, I stared at my phone for a long time, processing this new information about his therapy and self-reflection. The next morning, I called Dr. Becker to schedule a meeting about the London Fellowship. We met at a quiet cafe in Victoria Island, away from the hospital, where our conversation might be overheard. This is a remarkable opportunity, Omaha, she said, spreading the fellowship materials across Artable. The Royal London Hospital has one of the most advanced pediatric emergency departments in the world. The training you would receive there would make you one of the most qualified pediatric emergency nurses in Africa. What about the timing? When would the program start? September. 3 months from now? I know it's short notice, but they had a last-minute withdrawal and specifically requested candidates from our program. Your work here has gained international attention. As I walked back to the hospital after our meeting, my mind was spinning with possibilities and complications. This fellowship represented everything I had worked toward since rebuilding my life. Professional recognition, international experience, and the chance to bring world-class expertise back to African healthcare. But it also meant making a decision about Funmi's relationship with her father, just as he was finally learning to be the parent she deserved. That evening, I sat Funmi down for one of our regular heart-to-heart conversations. "My darling, how would you feel about living in London for a year? There's a special school where Mama could learn new ways to help sick children. And you could go to a British school and see new places." Her eyes lit up with excitement like in the movies with the red buses and the big clock. Exactly like that. "But it would mean being very far from Grandma and Grandpa and from your daddy, too." Her expression grew thoughtful. "Would Daddy be sad if we went away?" "Probably yes. But sometimes adults have to make difficult choices about what's best for their family's futures. Could Daddy visit you in London?" The innocence of her question touched my heart. She was trying to find a way for everyone to be happy, the way children do when they haven't yet learned that life often requires difficult trade-offs. "It would be very expensive for him to visit. My darling, London is very far away." That weekend, as I watched Adebayo help Funmi on the playground swings during their visit, I found myself studying him with new eyes. The desperate, controlling man who had pursued me relentlessly had been replaced by someone quieter, more thoughtful, more focused on our daughter's needs than his own desires. When he brought her back to our apartment that evening, I made an impulsive decision. "Adebayo, would you like to come up for a few minutes? There's something I need to discuss with you." He looked surprised but nodded. "Of course." After Funmi was settled with her evening cartoons, I led him to the kitchen where we could talk privately. "I've been offered a fellowship opportunity." I began then, explained about the London program, the timeline, and what it would mean for my career. Helliston, without interrupting, his face growing more serious as I spoke. "What are you asking me?" he said finally. "I'm asking what you think I should do." The question seemed to shock him. For several minutes he was quiet, staring out the kitchen window at the Lego skyline. "2 years ago I would have told you what I wanted you to do," he said finally. "I would have made it about how your choice affected me, what I needed, what worked best for my schedule and my life." And now he looked directly at me, and I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen during our marriage. Genuine consideration for someone else's well-being above his own. "Now I think you should take the fellowship. This is exactly the kind of opportunity you sacrificed when you were married to me. The kind of advancement you deserved then and deserve now. Funmi is young enough to adapt, and the experience of living abroad will be good for her too, even though it means you'll rarely see her for a year." "Even though it breaks my heart," he said quietly. "Because what's best for her is having a mother who achieves everything she's capable of achieving. And what's best for you is more important to me now than what's convenient for me." As I processed his words, I realized I was witnessing something remarkable. A man who was genuinely learning to love someone more than he loved his own comfort. The question was whether this growth was real and lasting, or whether it was just another phase in his attempts to win back my approval. Only time would tell, but for the first time in years I found myself hoping that his transformation was genuine, not for my sake, but for Funi's. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our descent into London Heathrow Airport. The pilot's announcement woke me from a restless sleep as our British Airways flight prepared to land after the 8-hour journey from Lagos. Bessie Dem, 5-year-old Funmi, pressed her face against the airplane window, marveling at the sprawling cityscape below us. "Mama, look. Everything is so green and tiny," she exclaimed, her excitement infectious despite my own nervousness about the massive life change we were undertaking. It had been 2 months since I accepted the fellowship at Royal London Hospital. 2 months of preparation, paperwork, and emotional conversations that had changed everything between Adebo and me in ways I never expected. The decision to Komedo London hadn't been easy, but it had revealed something crucial about the man Otto was becoming. In the weeks leading up to our departure, he had thrown himself into making the transition easier for Funmi, researching London schools, buying her books about British culture, and even learning to use video calling technology so they could maintain regular contact. Remember what Daddy taught you about the time difference? I asked Funmi as we gathered our carry-on bags. Yes, when it's morning here, it's afternoon in Lagos. So I can call him after school and he can't call me before work. She clutched the special phone Adebayo had bought for our international calls. A simple device that would allow them to maintain their relationship across the distance. The past month had been particularly revealing when Funmi had fallen ill with a high fever just 2 weeks before our departure. Adebo had surprised me by showing up at the hospital not with demands or dramatic gestures, but with practical support. He had taken time off work to help with her care, followed medical instructions without question, and had even coordinated with my parents to ensure someone was always available while I finalized fellowship preparations. Mrs. Ogandu. I'm Sarah Williams from the Royal London Hospital Fellowship Program. A cheerful British woman with short blonde hair approached us in the arrivals area at Heathrow, holding a sign with my name. She was exactly as professional and warm as she'd seemed during our video conference interviews. Welcome to London. And this must be Funmi, she said, crouching down to my daughter's eye level. I heard you're going to be attending Primrose Hill Primary School. They have an excellent international student program. As we settled into the taxi that would take us to our temporary accommodation in Camden, I reflected on the phone conversation I'd had with Adebo just before boarding our flight in Lagos. Oh, Mata, he had said, his voice thick with emotion. I want you to know how proud I am of you. This fellowship is exactly what you deserve, and Funmi's going to have experiences that will shape her entire life. Thank you, I had replied, surprised by the genuine warmth in his tone. I also want you to know that I understand now why you couldn't forgive me before. I wasn't ready to be the partner you deserved or the father Funmi needed. But this year apart, I'm going to use it to continue becoming the man I should have been all along. Ado, no, let me finish. I'm not saying this because I hope for anything specific from you. I'm saying it because it's true and because you deserve to hear it. You were always worthy of love, respect, and partnership. I was just too broken to give those things properly. Those words had stayed with me throughout the long flight, mixing my excitement about the fellowship with an unexpected emotional complexity about the man I was leaving behind. Our first weeks in London were a whirlwind of adjustment. The fellowship program was intensive and challenging, pushing me to master new protocols, technologies, and treatment approaches that were years ahead of what we used in Lagos. The Royal London Hospital's Pediatric Emergency Department handled cases from across Europe, giving me exposure to conditions and complications I had only read about in medical journals. Funmi adapted to her new school with their resilience that had always amazed me. She made friends quickly, developed a slight British accent that made me smile, and threw herself into learning about her new environment with enthusiasm. But it was our evening video calls with Adebo that provided the most surprising element of our London experience. Every Tuesday and Friday at 7 p.m. London time, we would call him for 30 minutes. What had started as a simple check-in with Funmi had gradually evolved into something more complex, as Adebo began sharing details about his own growth and changes. Daddy, guess what I learned today? Funmi would begin each call, launching into detailed descriptions of her school activities, new friends, and discoveries about British culture. He listened with patience and genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions that showed he wastrily engaged with her experiences rather than just going through the motions of parental duty. "And how is Mama's work going?" He would always ask, looking directly into the camera with those dark eyes that had once held so much anger and desperation, but now seemed calmer, more grounded. During one particularly memorable call in our third month in London, Funmi had fallen asleep on the sofa beside me, exhausted from a school field trip to the Natural History Museum. "She's growing up so fast," Adabo said softly, watching our sleeping daughter through the video screen. "She is, and she misses you, though she's too busy with new adventures to think about it most of the time." "What about you?" he asked quietly. "Do you ever miss anything about Legos?" The question caught me off guard. We had been so careful to keep our conversations focused on Funmi and practical matters that this was the first time he had asked me anything personal. "I miss my parents," I said honestly. "I miss the warmth, the chaos, the energy of home. But professionally, this experience is everything I hoped it would be." "I'm glad you deserve all of this and more. Adebayo, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "The counseling you mentioned before we left, is it helping?" He was quiet for a moment, considering his answer carefully. "It's helping me understand things about myself that I never wanted to face, like why I needed to control situations instead of trusting people, why I chose to believe the worst instead of fighting for the best, why I was so threatened by your strength instead of celebrating it. And what have you learned? That the man who threw you out of his house was scared. Scared of being vulnerable. Scared of not being enough. Scared of loving someone more than they loved him back. So I created situations that proved my fears were justified even when they weren't." His insight surprised me with its depth and honesty. "The therapist helped me see that when I accused you of infidelity, I was really expressing my own fear that I wasn't worthy of your faithfulness. When I refused to reconcile even after the DNA test, I was protecting myself from having to face how wrong I had been. And when I pursued you so aggressively after you rejected me, I was still trying to control the outcome instead of respecting your decision." That's very self-aware," I said carefully. "It's painful," he admitted. "But it's also freeing because now I understand that real love isn't about possession or control. It's about wanting the best for someone, even when that doesn't include you." As our fourth month in London approached, I found myself looking forward to our video calls in ways that surprised me. Not because I was falling back in love with Ado, but because I was witnessing something remarkable. A man genuinely transforming himself, not to win someone back, but to become worthy of the love he had lost. The fellowship was exceeding all my expectations. I was working with some of the world's leading pediatric emergency specialists, contributing to research that would improve child health care across Africa, and building professional relationships that would benefit my career for decades to come. But more than that, I was discovering parts of myself that had been dormant during my marriage. In London, I was Dr. Omata Ondmu, the brilliant Nigerian pediatric specialist. I was the single mother raising a confident, internationally minded daughter. I was the professional who commanded respect in one of the world's most prestigious hospitals. I was exactly who I had always been meant to be. One evening in late November, as rain drummed against our Camden apartment windows, and Funmi worked on homework that would have challenged Lagos University students, my phone rang with an unexpected call from Nigeria. It was Kem Ado's sister. "Sister Omaha," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "I had to call you. You won't believe what O has done." "What do you mean?" "He sold the Lekki house, the one you two lived in together, and he's used the money to establish a pediatric emergency training center at Lagos General Hospital in your name." My heart stopped beating for several seconds. "What?" "The Omola Owandu Pediatric Emergency Training Center. He worked with the hospital administration to create a program that will train nurses across West Africa in the techniques you're learning in London. He said it was his way of honoring the mother of his child and contributing to the field where you're making such an impact. As I processed this information, I realized that Adabio had done something I never expected. He had taken the symbol of our failed marriage, that beautiful house where our family had been destroyed, and transformed it into something that honored my professional achievements and would benefit countless children across Africa. It wasn't a grand gesture designed to win me back. It was an act of genuine respect for who I had become. And for the first time in almost 3 years, I found myself wondering if the man I had fallen in love with all those years ago was finally becoming the person he had always had the potential to be. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. Mama, is that Daddy? Funmi's excited voice carried across Lagos International Airport as we emerged from customs after our 11-month fellowship in London. She was pointing toward the arrival area, where a familiar figure stood holding a welcome sign with our names written in colorful letters. Ado looked different, thinner, more distinguished with touches of gray at his temples that hadn't been there when we left. He was wearing a simple white shirt and dark trousers instead of his usual expensive suits, and his smile when he saw us was quiet and genuine rather than the desperate intensity one remembered from before. Yes. "My darling, that's your daddy," I said, my heart beating faster than I expected as we approached him. "Welcome home," he said softly, his eyes moving between Funmi and me with careful respect. "How was your flight?" "Long but good," I replied, studying his face for signs of the controlling behavior that had characterized our previous interactions. Instead, I saw something that surprised me: peace. As we collected our luggage, Funmi chatted excitedly about London, her school friends, the museums we'd visited, and everything she was eager to show him. Helestinde with complete attention, asking thoughtful questions, and genuinely engaging with her stories rather than waiting for his turn to speak. "Daddy Mama became famous in London," Funmi announced as we walked toward the parking area. "Her boss said she was one of the best nurses they ever had." "I'm very proud of your mama," he said, glancing at me with unmistakable admiration. "She's always been exceptional. I'm just glad the world is finally recognizing what I should have celebrated from the beginning." The drive from the airport to my parents' compound in Mushin, where we would be staying until I found a new apartment, was filled with Funmi's excited narration of our London adventures. But I found myself listening more to what Adabio didn't say than to what he did. He made no assumptions about our future living arrangements, asked no leading questions about my plans, and made no attempts to insert himself into our decisions. The training center is scheduled to open next month, he mentioned as we navigated the familiar chaos of Lagos traffic. "I wanted to tell you in person rather than over the phone. The first cohort of nurses will begin the program in September, and several countries have already sent representatives to learn about replicating the model." "I still can't believe you did that," I said. "Honestly, I needed to do something meaningful with the money from the house sale. And after watching your work in London through our video calls, I realized that your expertise could benefit far more children if it was shared properly." That evening, after Funmi had fallen asleep, exhausted from jet lag and excitement, I sat with my parents in the compound courtyard, processing the emotions of being home. "He's different," Mama observed, echoing my own thoughts. "When he visits Funmi here, he's respectful, humble. Nothing like the angry man vows to demand and control everything. The question is whether it's real change or just another strategy," I said, though I was beginning to suspect I already knew the answer. "Time will tell," Papa said wisely. But child, you're different too. The woman who left here 11 months ago was strong but still healing. The woman who came back today is complete in herself. Whatever you decide about that man, you'll be deciding from a position of strength, not need. The next morning, I visited the site of the new training center. The building was impressive, modern, well-equipped with state-of-the-art simulation labs and classroom facilities that rivaled what I had seen in London. But what moved me most was the plaque by the entrance. The Omodula Oandu Pediatric Emergency Training Center dedicated to excellence in child health care across Africa. Dr. Ogandu, Mrs. Okafor, my former supervisor at Lagos General Hospital, rushed to greet me as I stood reading the plaque. Welcome home. We're so excited to have you back and to begin working with you on the training programs. Mrs. Okafor, this is incredible. I never imagined. Your ex-husband worked with us for months to design this facility, but he insisted that you would have complete control over the curriculum and operations when you returned. He said his role was simply to provide the funding and then step back. That afternoon, I asked Adabo to meet me at Akafe in Victoria Island, neutral territory, where we could talk privately. He arrived precisely on time, carrying himself with the same quiet dignity I had noticed at the airport. Thank you for the training center, Ibagan. It's more than I ever dreamed of. It's what you deserved all along. I just finally learned how to support your dreams instead of competing with them. Adu, I need to ask you something directly, and I need you to answer honestly. Of course. What do you want from me? What are you hoping to achieve with all of these changes, all of this growth? Because I need to know if this is genuine transformation or if you're still trying to manipulate a specific outcome. He was quiet for a long time, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. When he looked up, his eyes held a clarity I had never seen before. I want to be worthy of having loved you, he said simply. Not to win you back, but to honor what we once had by becoming the man who could have treasured it properly. I don't understand. Oh, Mata, I know there's no going back. I know that what I destroyed can't be rebuilt. And I know that you've grown beyond anything I could have imagined when we were married. But I also know that you gave me the most precious gifts anyone has ever given me. Your love, your partnership, and our daughter. And I threw those gifts away because I was too broken to recognize their value. He leaned forward slightly, his voice growing more intense but not desperate. The therapy, the changes in how I treat people, the way I'm trying to father fund me, even the training center. None of it is about winning you back. It's about becoming someone who is worthy of having received those gifts in the first place. It's about making sure that if Funmi ever loves someone, she'll expect to be treated with the respect I should have shown her mother. I felt tears prick at my eyes, but I blinked them back. And what about your feelings? What about what you want for your own life? I want to be a good father to fund me. I want to contribute something meaningful to the world. And I want to live with the knowledge that I finally learned how to honor love instead of destroying it. Even if that means you're alone. Even if that means I'm alone, he confirmed. Because real love isn't about possession, Omila. It's about gratitude, and I'm grateful every day that you existed in my life, even though I wasn't wise enough to treasure you while I had the chance. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of his words settling between us like something physical and real. There's something I need to tell you, I said finally. The fellowship offered me a permanent position in London department head with the opportunity to establish international exchange programs with African hospitals. His face went very still. That's an incredible opportunity, it is. And 6 months ago, I would have accepted it without hesitation. But now I realize that my real calling isn't just personal success. It's building something meaningful here in Nigeria for African children. The training center you created, it could become the foundation for a continent-wide network of pediatric emergency care. That's work that could impact millions of lives. So you're staying? I'm staying, but not for you, I clarified quickly. For the work, for Fun Me's connection to her heritage, for the chance to build something that matters. I understand. Do you? Because I need you to understand that my decision to stay doesn't change anything between us. I'm still not interested in romantic reconciliation. I'm still not the woman who will sacrifice her dreams for someone else's comfort. And I'm still not willing to rebuild a relationship with someone who has already shown me how easily he can destroy it. I know, he said quietly, and I respect that completely, but I continued surprising myself with what I was about to say. I'm willing to consider the possibility that we could be partners in co-parenting Fund Me, and in the work we're both doing to improve children's health care. Nothing more than that, but maybe something more meaningful than what we have now. Heisey's filled with tears he didn't let fall. That would be more than I have any right to hope for. It wouldn't be easy, I warned him. Trust has to be rebuilt slowly through consistent actions over time. And the moment you revert to your old patterns of control or manipulation, it's over permanently. I understand. And you need to continue with your therapy regardless of what happens between us. Because the man who threw us out of his house isn't gone. He's just being managed. And managing him is your responsibility, not mine. Already arranged, he said. I've made it a permanent part of my life, not a temporary fix. As we prepared to leave the cafe, I looked at this man who had once had the power to destroy my world with his cruelty, and was now offering me something I had never expected: genuine respect, space to be myself, and support for my dreams without strings attached. One more thing, I said as we stood to go. If we're going to do this co-parent successfully and work together professionally, you need to understand that I'm not the same woman you married. I'm stronger now, more independent, and completely unwilling to compromise my principles for anyone's comfort. Can you work with that woman? He smiled. Then the first genuinely happy smile I had seen from him in years. A modeler. That woman, strong, independent, uncompromising, is exactly who I fell in love with 8 years ago. I was just too insecure to appreciate her then. And now I know that the greatest privilege in life isn't being loved by someone extraordinary. It's being trusted by them to stand beside them as they build something beautiful. As I drove home to my daughter and parents, I realized that this wasn't the revenge story I had once imagined. There had been no dramatic destruction of Adebayo's life, no public humiliation, no financial ruin or social disgrace. Instead, there had been something far more powerful, the complete transformation of two people who had learned the true meaning of love, respect, and partnership. He had learned that real strength came from supporting others' dreams rather than controlling them. And I had learned that the most satisfying victory wasn't defeating someone who had wronged you, but becoming so completely yourself that their opinion of you became irrelevant. Fun Me would grow up seeing what it looked like when adults took responsibility for their mistakes, worked to become better people, and chose cooperation over conflict. She would see her mother as a woman who had built an extraordinary life through her own efforts, and her father as a man who'd learned to honor love instead of possessing it. And perhaps that was the greatest revenge of all, turning a story of betrayal and abandonment into Allison about growth, forgiveness, and the kind of love that makes people better than they were before. Like this story if it resonates with you. Share it with someone who needs to hear about the power of self-worth and second chances, and comment below. What do you think is the most important lesson from a model's journey? Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories about love, growth, and the strength we discover within ourselves. Mama, is that Daddy? Fun Me's excited voice carried across Lagos International Airport as we merged from customs after our 11-month fellowship in London. She was pointing toward the arrival area where a familiar figure stood, holding a welcome sign with our names written in colorful letters. Adebayo looked different, thinner, more distinguished with touches of gray at his temples that hadn't been there when we left. He was wearing a simple white shirt and dark trousers instead of his usual expensive suits, and his smile when he saw us was quiet and genuine rather than the desperate intensity one remembered from before. "Yes. My darling, that's your daddy," I said, my heart beating faster than I expected as we approached him. "Welcome home," he said softly, his eyes moving between Funmi and me with careful respect. "How was your flight?" "Long but good," I replied, studying his face for signs of the controlling behavior that had characterized our previous interactions. Instead, I saw something that surprised me. Peace. As we collected our luggage, Funmi chatted excitedly about London, her school friends, the museums we'd visited, and everything she was eager to show him, Hellestand with complete attention, asking thoughtful questions and genuinely engaging with her stories rather than waiting for his turn to speak. "Daddy Mama became famous in London," Funmi announced as we walked toward the parking area. "Her boss said she was one of the best nurses they ever had." "I'm very proud of your mama," he said, glancing at me with unmistakable admiration. "She's always been exceptional. I'm just glad the world is finally recognizing what I should have celebrated from the beginning." The drive from the airport to my parents' compound in Mushin, where we would be staying until I found a new apartment, was filled with Funmi's excited narration of our London adventures. But I found myself listening more to what Adebayo didn't say than to what he did. He made no assumptions about our future living arrangements, asked no leading questions about my plans, and made no attempts to insert himself into our decisions. "The training center is scheduled to open next month," he mentioned as we navigated the familiar chaos of Lagos traffic. "I wanted to tell you in person rather than over the phone. The first cohort of nurses will begin the program in September, and several countries have already sent representatives to learn about replicating the model." "I still can't believe you did that," I said honestly. "I needed to do something meaningful with the money from the house sale, and after watching your work in London through our video calls, I realized that your expertise could benefit far more children if it was shared properly." That evening, after Funmi had fallen asleep, exhausted from jet lag and excitement, I sat with my parents in the compound courtyard, processing the emotions of being home. "He's different," Mama observed, echoing my own thoughts. "When he visits Funmi here, he's respectful, humble, nothing like the angry man who used to demand and control everything. The question is whether it's real change or just another strategy," I said, though I was beginning to suspect I already knew the answer. "Time will tell," Papa said wisely. "But child, you're different too. The woman who left here 11 months ago was strong but still healing. The woman who came back today is complete in herself. Whatever you decide about that man, you'll be deciding from a position of strength, not need." The next morning, I visited the site of the new training center. The building was impressive, modern, well-equipped with state-of-the-art simulation labs and classroom facilities that rivaled what I had seen in London. But what moved me most was the plaque by the entrance. The Omodola O Gandamu Pediatric Emergency Training Center, dedicated to excellence in child health care across Africa. Dr. O Gandu, Mrs. Okafor, my former supervisor at Lagos General Hospital, rushed to greet me as I stood reading the plaque. "Welcome home. We're so excited to have you back and to begin working with you on the training programs, Mrs. Okafor. This is incredible. I never imagined. Your ex-husband worked with us for months to design this facility, but he insisted that you would have complete control over the curriculum and operations when you returned. He said his role was simply to provide the funding and then step back. That afternoon, I asked Adabo to meet me at Akafe in Victoria Island Neutral Territory where we could talk privately. He arrived precisely on time, carrying himself with the same quiet dignity I had noticed at the airport. "Thank you for the training center," he began. "It's more than I ever dreamed of. It's what you deserved all along. I just finally learned how to support your dreams instead of competing with them. Edu, I need to ask you something directly, and I need you to answer honestly." "Of course. What do you want from me? What are you hoping to achieve with all of these changes, all of this growth? Because I need to know if this is genuine transformation or if you're still trying to manipulate a specific outcome." He was quiet for a long time, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. When he looked up, his eyes held a clarity I had never seen before. "I want to be worthy of having loved you," he said simply, "not towing you back, but to honor what we once had by becoming the man who could have treasured it properly." "I don't understand." "Oh, Mata, I know there's no going back. I know that what I destroyed can't be rebuilt. And I know that you've grown beyond anything I could have imagined when we were married. But I also know that you gave me the most precious gifts anyone has ever given me. Your love, your partnership, and our daughter. And I threw those gifts away because I was too broken to recognize their value." He leaned forward slightly, his voice growing more intense but not desperate. "The therapy, the changes in how I treat people, the way I'm trying to father fund me, even the training center. None of it is about winning you back. It's about becoming someone who is worthy of having received those gifts in the first place. It's about making sure that if Fun may ever love someone, she'll expect to be treated with the respect it should have shown her mother." I felt tears prick at my eyes, but I blinked them back. "And what about your feelings? What about what you want for your own life?" "I want to be a good father to fund me. I want to contribute something meaningful to the world. And I want to live with the knowledge that I finally learned how to honor love instead of destroying it. Even if that means you're alone. Even if that means I'm alone," he confirmed. "Because real love isn't about possession, Omila. It's about gratitude. And I'm grateful every day that you existed in my life, even though I wasn't wise enough to treasure you while I had the chance." We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of his words settling between us like something physical and real. "There's something I need to tell you," I said finally. "The fellowship offered me a permanent position in London department head with the opportunity to establish international exchange programs with African hospitals." His face went very still. "That's an incredible opportunity, it is. And 6 months ago I would have accepted it without hesitation. But now I realize that my real calling isn't just personal success. It's building something meaningful here in Nigeria for African children. The training center you created, it could become the foundation for a continent-wide network of pediatric emergency care. That's work that could impact millions of lives. So you're staying?" "I'm staying, but not for you," I clarified quickly. "For the work. For Funmi's connection to her heritage, for the chance to build something that matters. I understand, do you? Because I need you to understand that my decision to stay doesn't change anything between us. I'm still not interested in romantic reconciliation. I'm still not the woman who will sacrifice her dreams for someone else's comfort. And I'm still not willing to rebuild a relationship with someone who has already shown me how easily he can destroy it." "I know," he said quietly, "and I respect that completely. But," I continued, surprising myself with what I was about to say, "I'm willing to consider the possibility that we could be partners in co-parenting Fun and in the work we're both doing to improve children's health care. Nothing more than that, but maybe something more meaningful than what we have now." His eyes filled with tears he didn't let fall. "That would be more than I have any right to hope for." It wouldn't be easy, I warned him. Trust has to be rebuilt slowly through consistent actions over time. And the moment you revert to your old patterns of control or manipulation, it's over permanently. I understand. and you need to continue with your therapy regardless of what happens between us. Because the man who threw us out of his house isn't gone. He's just being managed. And managing him is your responsibility, not mine. Already arranged, he said. I've made Ida a permanent part of my life, not a temporary fix. As we prepared to leave the cafe, I looked at this man who had once had the power to destroy my world with his cruelty and was now offering me something I had never expected. Genuine respect, space to be myself, and support for my dreams without strings attached. One more thing, I said as we stood to go. If we're going to do this, co-parent successfully, and work together professionally, you need to understand that I'm not the same woman you married. I'm stronger now, more independent, and completely unwilling to compromise my principles for anyone's comfort. Can you work with that woman? He smiled. Then the first genuinely happy smile I had seen from him in years. A modeler. That woman, strong, independent, uncompromising, is exactly who I fell in love with 8 years ago. I was just too insecure to appreciate her then and now. Now I know that the greatest privilege in life isn't being loved by someone extraordinary. It's being trusted by them to stand beside them as they build something beautiful. As I drove home, told me daughter and parents, I realized that this wasn't the revenge story I had once imagined. There had been no dramatic destruction of Adebayo's life, no public humiliation, no financial ruin, or social disgrace. Instead, there had been something far more powerful, the complete transformation of two people who had learned the true meaning of love, respect, and partnership. He had learned that real strength came from supporting others' dreams rather than controlling them. And I had learned that the most satisfying victory wasn't defeating someone who had wronged you, but becoming so completely yourself that their opinion of you became irrelevant. Funmi would grow up seeing what it looked like when adults took responsibility for their mistakes, worked to become better people, and chose cooperation over conflict. She would see her mother as a woman who had built an extraordinary life through her own efforts, and her father as a man who'd learned to honor love instead of possessing it. And perhaps that was the greatest revenge of all, turning a story of betrayal and abandonment into Allison about growth, forgiveness, and the kind of love that makes people better than they were before. Like this story if it resonates with you. Share it with someone who needs to hear about the power of self-worth and second chances. And comment below. What do you think is the most important lesson from Omala's journey? Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories about love, growth, and the strength we discover within ourselves.